Italy, England, Germany, America, and Sweden. Design and engineering of each country has its own identity. These 5 motorcycles are prime examples. But which of these brings the culture to the modern market best? We're here to find out. The Indian FTR 1200S brings American flat track inspired design to the street, from the tracker tires up to the wide handlebar. Ducati's Monster 1200S channels the purebred Italian superbike, but stripped down to the bare minimum with performance and comfort in mind. The Husqvarna Svartpilen 701 offers Swedish design, if channeled via Austria. Clean, simple design and showing the company's dirt bike heritage as the only single cylinder in the group. The BMW R9T is the foundation of Motorrad's heritage lineup and is a nostalgic reminder of the past opposed twin roadsters. And the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XC is the desert sled, recalling the bare bones machines that conquered races like the Baja 1000 before purpose-built off-road race bikes were invented. We've already hit the dyno and drag strip to gather performance data. Now we're on the central coast of California to find out which of these machines brings that heritage and culture to the modern world best. All right, we are back after a few epic days of testing on the Central Coast, and I got the man, editor-in-chief of Cycle World, Mark Hoyer, with me. And Mark, we had a unique test this time.
Oh, it was killer. Yeah, we took a different tack. You know, a lot of times we focus really solely on performance, not solely on performance, but you really get the bikes of the category, and you go out and you measure all the testing numbers and everything, and then you build your test, and that's your comparison. In this case, we got a really cool grouping of bikes together in the print issue, issue 2 of 2020. We called the story Old Souls, and it's because the bikes really kind of represent the spiritual essence of each manufacturer. You know, the origins of where they're from. You know, so it's like we got a flat tracker, we got like a dirt bike moto tracker thing, and touring and superbike and desert sled. So we have this really cool mix of bikes, and well, it's just really important to get out with your buddies and ride around and have a good time. But we get a lot of work done, and this test was exceptionally cool because we took off and headed north to sort of north of Santa Barbara, Los Alamos, really cool part of Central California. A little bit sleepy still, you know, like not super built up like wine country. And it was a very good test with probably 5 of the coolest, sort of most fun all-around motorcycles on the market.
For sure. And I mean, I think that we got to jump right into it and start with the flat tracker of the group, the Indian FTR 1200S, the race replica, the big V-twin, throw it sideways flat tracker.
Yeah, I think the main consensus that we got out of this whole situation was, from testing and riding, was it's kind of the animal of the group. It had maybe the strongest heartbeat. You know, the engine was really punchy, really killer torque curve. Chassis-wise, you know, those big wheels and long wheelbase. It kind of interestingly made it into a flow bike on a winding back road. You could pitch it, right? But you're just turning the big wheels, so it was more of a flow bike, but power all the time.
Totally.
Very cool.
You say flow bike, and I 100% agree with you, but you're right. It has that like hooligan characteristic that all you want to do is throw the thing sideways, then feel the big V-twin rip off the corner. Yeah,
it's like your friend who always wants to party. Like you love him and everything, but sometimes you're like, dude, mellow, come on. You know,
I like that.
But it's super punchy, nice spec brakes. The touchscreen was rad, right? Like really good touchscreen, and you could change the layout, and you could Bluetooth and see who's calling and play, you know, see what songs are playing. It's very, very nice.
And I think, not to mention, it looks like a flat track machine. It looks like something you'd find in the paddock of a local race.
Yeah, it was very successfully designed, and I know the guy who kind of drove that model into production at the company. And it's one of the main points that he made to me was how hard he pushed to make sure that that silhouette remained into the production bike. And you see a lot of the things that they did with the design to make that happen, putting the fuel very low and under the seat, they could get the power that way by making the tank shape and having the air box and all that, but really well done, you know. It has that silhouette that just makes your heart beat. It's very cool.
No kidding. And another racer of the group, the Ducati Monster 1200S, that's more of a super bike, I would say, rather than a flat track, but same thing.
Yeah, the original Monster was derived from their superbike models, you know, the Lores. It's like an 851 frame, and that had a 900 SS motor put into it, and it was very pure and elemental, and it's not as sort of retro as the other bikes, but it's also, it is retro. It's, you know, the Monster's 26 years old now, and it's very essential Ducati. As much as the Scramblers and stuff have come up, and they're amazing bikes, the Monster is still sort of this essence of Ducati. It's sort of their maturing into more of a modern brand almost at that time in '94. This bike is like a stripped super bike, and that's why we picked it, because like what's more Italian than a super bike, right? So
and I was about to add, like, we're talking about retro and it has that heritage, but then again it has a big bore motor, a big super bike-esque motor with electronics and big Brembo brakes, everything.
1198, super high spec components, highest priced in the test, but also incredibly valuable. Like I got on that bike, we're in the mountains above Santa Barbara, the sun is setting, and you know, like, oh, video guy says like, hey, run off and you know, get some POV riding footage. I'm like,
no problem.
Oh man, you rip up the road, and it's just all that stuff that's so important on a super bike type bike, where the brake modulation is just that much better. The chassis feel, like you go in and that beautiful feeling where you're trailing down to the apex and you're releasing and then you peeling the throttle and that thing gets it on.
You're feeling every input with that motorcycle for sure. So the Ducati Monster 1200S, that was an amazing machine on our tests.
It's really, you know, in most ways, like best performance numbers. If you're looking for that technically superior sort of retro soul bike, like
that's it.
That's the bike. In this group, that's the one you want to like. You want to win the Super Naked Bike Championship on, right? So.
Well, cool, right on. And then the BMW R9T, it has that kind of heritage look, and it somewhat has a kind of heritage feel to it as well. Yeah,
that was a really funny situation. You know, so you get on the R9T, and you got these analog gauges, and you're just like, wow.
It's 2020, guys.
Those are analog gauges. And from a design perspective, you could see why they would choose that.
I get it.
Like, it's retro. But now we're all so used to having touch screens and stuff, or at least, you know, screens with lots of information, different layouts. It was almost weird, and it almost didn't feel retro. It just felt old, right?
Yeah.
And the whole bike just kind of feels old. And there's positives to that because, well, like the sound of it, right? The flat twin. You know, we had the Acura exhaust on it, and whatever they did in tuning to make that thing sound the way it sounds.
Unbelievable.
You wanted to follow it on the road if you weren't riding it. You know, really good sound, really fun to ride, a little bit more work if you were really charging, right? Like you had to be very precise with shifting to make sure you didn't upset the chassis and stuff. Lively and really interesting, but perhaps the most retro feeling experience in this test.
100%. I 100% agree with that. I think you nailed it spot on, is that it's retro, it has that retro theme, but at the same time it does feel old. It's not a modern day motorcycle with a retro throwback.
I know as a taller tester, you know, it's kind of jammed up with the hump.
The rear cowling.
Yeah, the rear cowling. It's cool because you can just get rid of that. That whole that rear section is designed to be changed up.
Right.
So if you're a larger rider, I think you're gonna
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, you're not gonna have. Yeah, right. Like some of us didn't have that problem. But other than that, very classic BMW experience and really fun.
And now we got the Husqvarna Svartpilen 701. It was kind of the dirt bike, Swedish, simple design.
Kind of an odd choice for the comparison, being sort of half the displacement of the other bikes.
And it was the only one as a single. All the others were twins.
Big bore single, 693, couple counterbalancers, super smooth. Made 69 horsepower, which is less than the other bikes.
Right.
But it also weighed, on our scales, 353 pounds.
That's right.
And so you're sort of like, well, how's this thing gonna fit in with all these big twins and these big burly bikes? It fit in just fine. I mean, quarter mile time and stuff, you had to rev it more. It didn't have that kind of stump pulling torque. Pretty torquey, I mean, but compared to a 1200, of course not. But man, you start revving that thing and ripping down a back road, it was magic. Just, it was like flying. And we had a lot of debate about the styling. To me, that bike, it represents kind of the essence of new. It is retro, but it feels like a new motorcycle. It's not derivative of anything, right? It doesn't.
Right.
It's not
it's
like
its own motorcycle.
Yeah, it's like new design language.
Yeah.
Really compelling, and like a lot of guys on the comparison test were talking about like how much they could park that bike and appreciate it, and then go ride it and appreciate it.
Right.
You know, that it had a real aesthetic to it. But it really stood up well in this group, I felt.
Yeah, totally. I think that all of our testers, we found that it performed very well. And in my opinion, I thought it did everything very well, as we say, but it didn't have that personality that maybe the others did.
Yeah. I wonder about that. You know, I wonder about a big single in the American market, because generally the American market hasn't accepted a big single cylinder street bike kind of ever. I mean, there's been some really, you know, great motorcycles like the Honda GB500 and the SR 400, you know, the Yamaha.
Yep.
They're really neat bikes, but the emotional experience and the sound that we've all grown up, twins are just such a powerful message that I think overcoming that for a single can be a challenge.
Right.
I love singles. Like, I kind of like the way it sounded. Definitely needed a pipe. You know, like I would put a little more snap into the exhaust pipe legally.
Right.
But it was a little different, for sure.
But another dirt bike, desert sled, Scrambler type, we had the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XC. This is the short travel Scrambler of the
Shorter,
two.
yeah.
Shorter, right? Yeah. I still had a hard time flat footing, but
Ever since they redid the Heritage platform with the 1200, liquid cooled 1200, all the bikes that have come out of that have been really exceptional. They've just done a very excellent job with that platform. It was really surprising. You know, in a sense, it's kind of big dirt bike. It's got a dash of adventure thrown in.
it's a little Scrambler.
Yeah, Scrambler.
With the brown seat.
Brown seat, gotta have the brown seat. We made a big deal out of that, about the brown seat. It was good times. Super stylish, really nice finishes. And then you ride the bike, and Adam Wahid on the test, editor motorcyclist, pointed out, the bike will play if you want to play.
Right.
It'll be completely mellow if you want to be mellow. You can short shift it, and it's really comfortable.
Yep.
It is big, like, you know, you're going to have a challenge. Like,
Right.
I'm 6'2". I don't
Pick on
even,
the small guy.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, totally. Can't watch me. But I don't have a problem. Like, I don't think about seat height too much. I consciously think about it for testing, but you know, it's never a barrier for me. And so as I rode the Triumph around, I spent quite a bit of time on that. It's just really well tuned. The chassis is really nice. The brake feel is really good. It's got a comfortable riding position. The gauge package works really well. It sounds great. You know, it's got the 270-degree crank, so it mimics a V-twin,
Yep.
a 90-degree V-twin. So it's got that soulful sound that you're looking for. And I could click that thing into sixth and ride to Canada.
Right.
You know, like, I was perfectly comfortable with that. A little bit of hanging on in the wind. You know, like,
Yep.
obviously no fairings in this test, but phenomenally good all-around motorcycle.
Yeah, it was the do-it-all machine of the bunch, and it was the one that we actually took through the dirt too.
Yeah, and and that's cool. Like, it didn't, you know, it wouldn't win the comparison because we went in the dirt.
Right.
Because it could go in the dirt, because we could have got a bunch of scramblers.
Yeah.
But it is a nice bonus. I mean, as I thought about this test afterward, we really could have picked one of the street model versions, the 1200 with 17s, and it would have been fine in this comparison, but we really like that spiritual essence of the Scrambler. So.
Well, with any comparison test, there's a lot of debate, but especially this one.
Yeah, this was extra work, because, you know, when you're dealing with something like soul, and you're dealing with some of these kind of ineffable things and stuff, you can't measure at the racetrack, at the drag strip, on the dyno, on the scale. There's going to be more debate.
Right.
We had 5 phenomenal motorcycles, and that makes it also very hard. But it's why we spent 3 days on the road, also because it's fun.
Right.
But you know, you got to go out and do that. And I'd say one point here that's real important is, like, usually at the end of a comparison test, you're like 300 miles away from the office, you're done. You might do a little shooting on the way back, but you know that you have a 300-mile day of trading bikes and talking more, and, like, there's always one bike, or there's 2 bikes, or some, not always, but in this case there wasn't. There was not one bike that people were like, oh man, I don't want to get stuck on that on the ride home, right?
All of them were great.
They're all bikes you could live with, all bikes you could have a lot of fun with. So take the Ducati Monster, right? Like, killer bike, technically superior to every bike in the comparison, a little bit more money, got the value. I would say here, it was maybe in this group a little too intense.
That's right, yeah.
Not that you couldn't live with it, but it was just way more intense, and people didn't have quite the same feeling for the bike, you know, and it's maybe slightly out of category, you know, but it didn't garner the votes at the end of the test.
That's right.
So we moved on. BMW R9T, I mean, killer German feel, super soulful sound.
Flat twin engine, yeah.
Flat twin, it's sort of like flying a vintage aircraft on the ground. I would say the general feeling was a little bit less refined, like harder to ride smoothly on a winding road with the shifting. Didn't fit everybody, albeit you can change the seat, right? But still, it wasn't, it didn't focus the tester's love as much.
Right.
Husqvarna Svartpilen, like, debate of even including it just based on its displacement, but it's super stylish bike, right? It really fits the feeling.
Does everything very, very well.
Yeah, and it was more than competent. Like, there's no reason not to consider that bike just because it's a 693 single, right? I mean, we're talking nearly 700 cc's, buckets of power, but some of the people didn't connect with it. You know, you talked about like, well, yeah, no, I didn't, that sound and the feel, it just didn't speak to me quite as much. Super competent bike, particularly if I'm a newer rider. 353 pounds, super light, and very approachable, but did not coalesce testers' opinions. So it really came down to a split decision, 3-2. Indian FTR 1200S.
Flat tracker.
Flat track, yeah, I know,
I love that
you're
thing.
super passionate. And the Triumph Scrambler 1200XC. Split decision, and there's pluses and minuses there. What did you like about the FTR?
I really like what we talked about earlier, is that it does everything. It's a flow motorcycle. It's very composed when you want it to be composed. Yeah. But then it has that hooligan characteristic on the inside. Being the racer of the group, I like chucking it sideways and pitching off into corners. And I sometimes have a
back shifting.
Yeah, I sometimes have a hard time controlling myself. But that was a motorcycle to me.
Yeah, everybody agreed that it was the super soul power. Like, it just wanted to go all the time. It had so much spirit. Day-to-day, it'd be fine as a day-to-day bike, but it was a little looser. The Dunlop dirt track
DT.
Yeah, they're bitching. I don't know if I could.
They're DOT flat track tires.
Yeah, I don't know if I could change them.
Yeah.
I would kind of, you know, it's kind of the, it's.
And it gives it a look too,
right? And so like you're sort of losing what the bike is if you change those tires. To the detriment of the bike though, it followed rain grooves. And it's just, it wasn't quite as composed, and it's not uncomposed, and you know, it's part of the charm.
Right, it's almost supposed to be uncomposed.
Yeah, and so that, in that sense, super rad, but we got 2 votes. Like, when we really pushed and we had to make people choose, it was 2 votes. And then we had 3 votes for the Triumph Scrambler 1200XC. And a couple nice things about it, you know, we're not really comparing price. I mean, if you're shopping, you're gonna compare the price, what can you afford? But it's a, you know, $14,000 bike. It had a really broad utility. And
it does it all.
Does it all.
Yep.
And you could ask it to shred.
Yep.
And even with its long suspension and its big front wheel, just foot peg to foot peg.
Yeah,
super composed, right? Just.
I saw you grinding off the feelers in front of me.
And just really nice all around. Clutch feel, transmission shift, engine sound can be very mellow and smooth if you're short shifting, revving it out. Like, it really kind of did it all. It really embodied the soul of the test with a considerable dose of broad utility, and really fostered the relationship, because even if it wasn't, you know, the first pick, it was the second pick.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
So, and that's why we picked it. Again, hard to go wrong with such a phenomenal group of bikes. Like, if you like the way one of these looks, it's like,
take it.
Yeah, you're not going to be disappointed.
All right, guys, there you have it. That's our Old Souls comparison. 5 of the coolest motorcycles with the most spirit on the market. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, read the full story in issue 2 of 2020 and on cycleworld.com. We'll see you next time.